miss or sir, I didn't understand that.
But not a lot of like seminar type interactions and conversations.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, since I mentioned miss and sir, it just brought me back as well. At home, you have to address them with like miss, sir, teacher, whatever. But here, you know, when some professors are like, "Oh, just call me John," or "Just call me Kate," or whatever, it's like that feels very proximal. Like that feels really close, and it doesn't feel like there's enough distance. So that was something that it took me a while to get used to as well. Other differences between being educated at home to here. At home, just with how our education system is set up, students are streamlined into certain career paths pretty early as opposed to how it goes in the US. So in Form 1, which you're like 12 in Form 1, 11 or 12 around there, you, at least for my school, and this is true for many other schools, you take about 13 to 14 different subjects. And that's true of Form 2 as well, and Form 3 actually. Then in Form 3, you take these big like national level examinations, and you pick about 8 or 9 subjects from that to focus on for the next 2 years of your life. So that will be in Form 4 and Form 5. At the end of Form 5, you take another series of national examinations. And this is kind of like your high school leaving exams, if you will. Some students choose after that to go on and do 2 additional years of education in which they have to now choose 4 subjects to focus on. And that 2 years is like the US equivalent of the AP exams. Okay. So very early on, from Form 1, taking all those subjects to reaching up to when you're 17 and only taking about 4 subjects, it's a very continuous, like, streamlining process. So you kind of get locked into different things, and that, of course, determines what you'll study in university. Whereas here, you come in college and it's like, oh, especially for liberal arts education, like, explore, see what sparks your interest. You may have an idea of what you want to do, but you should challenge yourself. Get outside of your comfort zone. Take an art class, take a history class, take something different, you know? So that's something that I really valued, and when I was applying for colleges, I looked for specifically liberal arts-based schools so that I would be exposed to, like, those other opportunities and fields of thought, because I wasn't at home. It was very much like...
Gotcha. And did you know, like, at the time back home that wasn't what you enjoyed, like that streamline?
No, actually. Because, I mean, it was the system that I was in.
It was just, that was it.
So that was how it goes, you know? And if people didn't want to continue to do Form 6, that is the 2 years, after you finish your exams in Form 5, you would, like, go on to find some trade or something that you could go in, or go to, like, cosmetology, like, something like that, or bookbinding, or anything really, any kind of trade. But... yeah, it wasn't until when I actually started the college process and I thought to myself, well, what do I want in higher education? Am I sure that this thing that I've been streamlined into is what I want to do? I want to give myself the chance to explore. That's when I was like, yeah, liberal arts based it is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to, like, imagine it like that. That's really cool. So just out of curiosity, were some of, like, those broad forms, did those include trades, or were they all academic?
So at my particular school, they were all like going into academic fields. So whether that be STEM, a lot of it was STEM, to be honest. Small portion of it was like arts. So a lot of painting and drawing, some students did. Some was more technology oriented. And then environmental stuff as well. But at other schools, so this is the thing, our education system is really interesting. At other schools, they would more so focus on helping students develop trade, helping students develop skills that they could use, like metal working, wood building, things like that. Yeah. So, all right, what happens with our education system? When you are around 10, you have every single child in the country has to take this exam called SEA, Secondary Entrance Assessment. So you go in from primary school to secondary school. You have to take an exam to determine where you would best fit. So the better you do on that exam, the more likely you would be to get into a school that is, like, well recognized in the country as having students who come out and be very successful, that sort of thing. And if you don't do as great, then you would be placed in a school that is more suitable for how you perform and helping you develop from where you start at, as opposed to having a student who didn't perform as well go to a school that is like seen as high achieving and then struggle in an environment like that. So you tend to see that in the schools that are not as quote unquote, and this may sound harsh, but quote unquote academically inclined, like don't necessarily attract the best performers in the country. They have more options in terms of let's develop some trade, like hand skills that they can get into if they're interested in it.
That's very interesting. And so then just coming to Duke, like you obviously it was a huge difference.
Yeah.
But then like how are your first few years and like how's it right now?
It was rough.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, it was really, really rough. Just dealing with everything that I think any or your average college student would deal with, but a bit more magnified. So loneliness, or loneliness in terms of being far away from home, and it not being like a 2 or 3 hour drive away. You know, so that was something hard to deal with. I'm an only child, and I grew up with just me and my mother, so I was very used to it just being me and her. But then having to like realize that she was my main support system and she wasn't nearby. Yes, I could call her on WhatsApp, I could message her, we could be in communication like that. But it's definitely different being able to like be in the same physical space as that person is super different. And then also talking about physical space, having to have a roommate as someone who never like that was hard. I'll just be honest. And then cultural differences in terms of like what does clean look like to you? Does clean even matter? Who do we have over in the room? Like communication, just having to go through all that stuff. Food, that was something to get used to as well. I had visited the US before, but visiting for 3 weeks and living they're two very different things, and it comes clear to you really quickly.
Did you visit Durham?
No, I'd never been to North Carolina. I had been to New York, Atlanta, and Michigan briefly.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, the food was something to get used to. Just like missing food from home is so hard. And then also I think one day I went to, Farmstead, and they had some curry chicken, and I was like, okay, that don't look like no curry chicken. I tried it, it was horrendous. I was very disappointed. What else about that transition? What helped was I joined SOCA, I joined Students of the Caribbean Association, and so in one sense I did feel like I had a community that could to some extent understand making that transition, but on the other hand they really didn't, because it was largely comprised of second generation people, so people who were children of immigrants from the Caribbean, and some of them had never even been to their parents' home country, and it kind of, I don't know, set me the wrong way freshman year when I would hear them commenting on like current issues in the Caribbean in a way that like they had authority to speak on it, and I was like, ugh. But now I have more of an ability to understand their desire to be more in proximity with their culture, even though they have not had the opportunity to visit and actually step foot on their like family's homeland.
Yeah.
You know? What else about that transition? Definitely academics, like, and it is for every college student, like it's just at a different level.
Of course.
But for me, I felt like I wasn't even speaking the same language as like the other students in the class and the teachers, because what I think everybody learns in college is that your background really could either set you up to perform super well in this environment or not. And some people just have a lot more on the ground work to do to be able to understand like, oh, this is how you network, or these are the resources that are available to you. You should be going out here and like being your best advocate, your best, you know.
Was that not like very harped on back home? It was just kind of like you're in the system, or?
It was, again, like maybe in the university setting it may be different, but I only have the education perspective from being a 5-year-old to an 18-year-old in that context. What I do know of our university system is it kind of falls off. Like we have good education, primary through secondary, and it's completely free. But at the university level, there's just some kind of, I don't know, it's not up to par at all. And that's why my parents really wanted me to pursue education abroad, even though, to be honest, I did not want to come abroad. I wanted to stay at home. So that was even hard, like trying to make that decision, and I ended up taking a gap year to just like really, all right, if this is what you guys want me to do, okay. I'll need time to do it, because also there's so much. This is so complex. I don't know how much time you guys have.
No, we've got really as much as you need. Our teacher told us to shoot for like 50 minutes to an hour, but I'm free for a while. I've got it.
Oh, you said 50 to 1 hour.
She said 50 to 1 hour just to
we'll
shoot for it, but I think we're gonna.
Yeah.
And of course, here and there a bit doesn't matter.
What was I saying?
No, yeah, this is all super interesting. Like,
Okay.
yeah, and totally off topic. Have you guys found any good Caribbean like food in the area? No.
I have. Okay, so let me tell you. So we usually, I'm no longer like in SoCa, but for our events, we usually cater from what's the name of that place? No, it'll come to me. Caribbean crust. Something like that. It's okay, I know it. It'll come to me. But I mean, it's all right. When I see the oxtails, I get excited because oxtails are delicious. It's seasoned differently, of course. Nothing's gonna taste like it tastes at home. But I mean, it'll do. It's not the best. But like people, if you guys come to our event, I'm sure you'll be raving about the food. But then that's the thing, like it's not as authentic. It's still tasty by like regular standards, like the rice and peas and oxtails and curry chicken and stuff. Golden Crest. There we go. That's the name of the restaurant, Golden Crest. My friends, I just did a study abroad program last spring, and one of the girls on the program is from Durham, and she told me that she knows this really, really, really good Jamaican restaurant somewhere like close to wherever she lives. So whenever she comes home for Thanksgiving, we're gonna go to the restaurant. It's literally called Jamaica. And so I'm really excited. She said, I mean, she is American, but she said it's really good, so I'm excited to try.
Interesting. Yeah, my parents used to live in the St. John, so USVI.
Okay.
So I've had some of like the great food, and I kind of know a little bit what you mean, but even so, I'm sure it still is heads and tails compared to. Yeah, and so you said you like took this gap year, like you were getting ready for it mentally, right? Of course. So before you got here, or when did you visit? Like how old were you when you visited?
So I visited a good number of times because my mom has some family who lives in the U.S. and so does my dad. Well, my dad actually does live in the U.S. He lives in New York.
Okay.
So let's see, maybe like every other year or so. There was a point where there may have been 3 years that I didn't visit, but maybe like 8, 9 times before college, I could say. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And so in like these experiences, what was your impression of like the American culture and society? Was it something you were excited to become a part of, or something you were not looking forward to? So
the thing is, with those visits, I was staying with Caribbean family members, right? So even though I was in the U.S., I was still getting like a Caribbean perspective at the same, like I was eating the food that my aunt or my mother would cook. So it wasn't a lot of like fast foods or a lot of even trying foods from different culture groups who live in the US. It was kind of like our own little bubble, right? Over the summers I would like do the, what do you call it? Like the summer reading challenges on the off summers that I was here and didn't go to Tobago. Like the library summer reading challenges. If I was in Georgia with my family, we would like go to Stone Mountain Park and look at the light show, so that sort of thing. But I can't say that like I learned about US history, like I learned about the civil rights movement. No, I can't say that like I knew what was currently happening in the US. Not really. In terms of cultural stuff, everything just seemed big and excessive. Like going to Costco, like wow, everything. Everything was really, really salty. But yeah, I can't say that I gained a lot of insight on what life in the US was by visiting those times. It almost seemed like I knew more from TV. Like watching TV at home, like I would know like, oh, that's how they would say that word instead of how we would say it. Or just stuff like that.
Yeah, and that just made me think of, so obviously you spoke English at home. Were there any other languages that you were exposed to?
Yeah, so Patois, our Creole, But for the most part, like we do speak our one of our official languages is English, but it's like Trini English, so there's a lot of dialect in there as well. And if I were to speak in my full accent, it would be significantly harder to understand. But I think y'all are good for now.
Gotcha.
This
No,
is obviously not my full accent. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I was also exposed to Spanish as well, because our proximity, we're super close to
To
Venezuela.
Venezuela, right? Yeah.
And right now, I don't know how much you guys know about like what's going on with their political unrest. Our country has welcomed thousands of people from Venezuela and like given them cards and so on to work for a year at least. So like in school, you have to pick between, for the most part, studying Spanish and French. A lot of people end up choosing Spanish just because it's more useful in that sense.
Interesting. So I'm just thinking, like coming over from Venezuela, and so now you have you talked to your mom about it at all? Like, about like the Venezuelan crisis and like the transition of that?
We talked some. I was home for about 7 weeks this past summer, July, August. And I was able to speak to a good number of Venezuelans, like whenever I was at the beach or we were out eating or whatnot. So did you want to know like what it's
kind of what
ground?
That, and like what's your take on it, seeing it from over here and getting like a lot of news versus hearing it firsthand versus seeing it firsthand, like when you went back to visit?
Yeah, so what I saw and heard from the Venezuelans that I was able to speak to was that for the most part, people from my country have been very hospitable towards them. People have welcomed them into their homes. Like some people have the Venezuelans living with them. Some people have helped them get jobs like in local supermarkets and like kind of entry-level positions and that sort of thing. But at the same time, of course, it's hard for them because they do have loved ones at home and I'm so sorry.
No, you're right.
All of everything's happening at once. But I honestly have been somewhat disappointed with how the media is portraying like attitudes in my country towards the influx of Venezuelans, because of course not everyone is going to be gung-ho and excited. We have our own issues. We're a very small country. Like the two islands, we're a very, very small country, and we're dealing with our own stuff as well. But for the most part, our mindset is these are our neighbors. If you are able to help. If you're not, then you can't. But as long as you are able to, and then you have to think as well, natural disasters could hit at any moment. We were just under tropical storm Karen, which did not get a lot of coverage at all, and there was a lot of damage to Tobago, but you have to think you would want someone to reach out their hand to you in the future. So I think that's like the majority mindset. And I think a couple weeks ago, a BBC, I hope I'm not wrong, but a BBC video came out about like just the attitudes in Trinidad and Tobago towards the Venezuelan immigrants, and it was just largely negative. And all of the comments were just like, this is not what it actually is on the ground. Of course, this is a part of it. Of course. And there may be protests and that sort of thing. But at the same time, that's not the dominant narrative that's going around. So, and then like, with the U.S.'s climate of immigration, this is just like an immigration hot heavy.
And so how does that tie to your perception of like what's going on right now, I guess?
I think overall it's just sad. It's just sad that like these boundaries that we as humans have set are like quote unquote impenetrable, and like you can't enter my country because you come from this country and there's this religion that's dominant there and we don't accept that, or like there are these practices that you guys do that just like and then the idea of like hierarchy and superiority and who has a right to live where. It's just sad. It's sad. And I think that's what the vice provost, like her whole thing is gonna be in a couple of weeks, is immigration in a divided world. Have you guys gotten emails on that?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, so it's definitely like a hot topic, and it has been, but just with this administration, it's even more so.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a lot. Like that.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're recording.
Yeah,
so you
absolutely.
Go back and
thank
listen.
you.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and so we got that, immigration just coming in, and so moving to like a more personal level, did you experience any issues like that applied to you explicitly? Like, did you face discrimination at all, or any sort of just adversity that not your average person just coming in would face? Do you, like, because of immigrant strategy?
Let's see, not because of my.
Or just like in the differences in where you've come from.
Okay. Yeah, so the first thing that came up was race talks, but then you said like not your average, and I mean I don't know. So when I came in, 2016 elections, like, boom, right? So, and especially it being a college campus, these conversations, these racial discourses were happening all the time. And coming from a country in which, like, so we are very I don't know if you guys did any research on Trinidad and Tobago before this, but we're a very multicultural, multi-ethnic society. The two dominant ethnicities or races are Black and Indian, right? So we have a huge East Indian population in our country who came over, like they came over as indentured laborers, and that automatically set up this like hierarchy or distinction between the Black enslaved and the like Indian laborers, because they were being paid for their work, right? And they were promised either return passage home or land at the end of their period of work. But coming from that society in which like being Black was like the dominant, and then coming here where it's not, and having these conversations all the time, it was exhausting, it was tiring, it was confusing. I felt like the US honestly was just too caught up in race, and it was just too fixed on it and was looking for race in every single thing. But this was of course my naive freshman year viewpoint, and after having spent some time and hearing the first-hand experiences of African Americans, and then me myself having similar experiences of discrimination while on this college campus or elsewhere, now I understand why it is something that in this country absolutely needs to be talked about and addressed. So yes, I did face discrimination during my time here for my race. In terms of like culture and like the fact that I'm from the Caribbean, it's more of, it's not even microaggressions, it's just like ignorance that comes across like a judgment. I don't know. So for example, when people say, oh, you're so well spoken though, you know, or they say, so like, how did you get here? Or just things like that, and you know, added with facial expression and kind of like assessing and that sort of thing. That happens constantly, like even up to that happens constantly. Let's see. Like someone literally was like, oh, so you guys have like internet there and all those, so like how did you apply, like all those sorts of things. It's just ignorance that is annoying.
Yeah.
But
if I say anything, please like let me know if I'm just making false assumptions or something. Please clarify.
Will do.
Like we did some research, but if anything, just I apologize in advance. What else do we have? We've got that, and so we've kind of discussed this a bit, but so finding similar cultures within like the Duke campus in particular and coming here. Would you say that shaped your experience for the better?
Oh, definitely. So I came to international orientation my year. So the international kids get to move in like 5 days or so before the domestic students come, so they could get over jet lag and just like, you know, start feeling out the campus. And honestly, the friends that I made during international orientation, I stuck with them for like the first year or two, because it was, even though we were super different, I was the only Trinidadian student my year. Actually, I want to say the only Caribbean student as well. There was this one guy, but he I think he moved to the US like before he was 13 or something. And I'm saying 13 like far out. He could have been like 6, but before he was around 13 or so. So like he didn't have the experience of applying from there or like going to high school there and all that stuff. Like he of course had claim to the culture, but it was just a little different. But I was the only Caribbean, and he didn't come to international orientation or anything like that. So I was the only Caribbean student my year. And so, what was I saying? I forgot.
Just talking about.
Oh yeah, and so we all, as international kids, had that experience of being foreign in the U.S. And there was some sort of solitude that you could find within that group, whether it be through talking about homesickness, or through talking about missing the food, or through talking about like how these students are able to communicate. Like honestly, it felt like when the domestic kids came, they were instantly best friends. And like they clung to each other, and like they had all of these similar experiences. Like, oh yeah, my family vacation there too. Or oh yeah, like I did that prep course too for the SAT. Or just anything that it seemed like they were so much easier like able to connect. And when we tried that, or when we were put in instances where we're interacting with the domestic students and trying to get to know each other, it was often that like it felt like it took so much more effort. And sometimes the domestic students didn't want to put in that effort. That was a lot of what my freshman fall was, recognizing that like people were interested up until like, oh, where are you from? And then you say where you're from, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then that's it. I'm not interested in carrying that conversation further, or like just getting to know you for a human and not necessarily like your background or that sort of thing. So I did find a lot of comfort and solidarity in the international students community, and every year since then I've gone back to serve as an IHOP, which is International House Orientation Pair, and like just help welcome the international students and just share what my experiences have been, and be honest and like realistic as to like these are some things that you might face, and this is how like you should start adjusting, because it's not like you could expect all the adjustment to come from like you are in a new cultural space, and this is a space that you as an international student are going to have to learn. So just starting up all of those different conversations, and like it was rough, but we're here. Yeah.
And so has your experience like in your recent past, I guess, been favorable? Like has it improved significantly since when you got here?
Definitely.
Would you say?
I think for me, what has been a really big help is my faith community. So I'm a Christian, and I joined Crew, which is a Christian org on campus, the freshman year, but it didn't really fit. Like it was not a fit for me. And then towards the beginning of sophomore year, I joined RUF, which is Reformed University Fellowship, and it's another Christian ministry group on campus. And honestly, like those people there were the first set of people to show me like people could be good on this campus, like the domestic students specifically, because I was good with my international friends, right?
Yeah.
But that was the first glimpse of what good, kind, genuine people look like here in the US on Duke's campus, and how they like intentionally pursue friendship and like wanting to get to know you in a way that is like true to you, you know? So that is like, that group is one of my main like communities that I found here. And then also like you grow as an individual, and you learn how to kind of hear the intent behind what people are saying. So instead of taking everything at face value and saying, oh, so you just asked me if we have internet, or oh, you just asked me if we all like swing on hammocks and like go to the beach all day, you know? It depends, like it varies person to person what their intent with that is, and me wanting to genuinely understand what their intent is before I pass judgment and I'm like, oh, you're trash, you know? Before I do that, like, it's kind of sussing out. So why do you think that? Like, why do you think that or what is that perception that you have? Let's talk about it. Like, what does the media show you? What did you grow up reading in books about, like, island escapes and, like, you know, that sort of thing? So you grow as a person, and you learn how to navigate in this space. So I've definitely matured during my time here, of course, and that's made my experience really good. I always seek out opportunities to like learn how to be a better leader. So sophomore year, junior year, I was very much in the LDSA. Do you know what that is? Like Leadership, Development, and Social Action Office. I'm doing programs with them, like the Women's Leadership Initiative, just different things with them to like develop myself and like learn who I am. So I really, really sought me out during my time here. But yeah, in the recent times, like I've been good. My friend group is solidified. That's something that like is so rocky, just that everybody goes through. I think now looking back on it, remember how I mentioned it felt like all the domestic students were instantly best friends. Now I can say they were not instantly best friends. It's just like everybody didn't want to be alone, and everybody just wanted someone who they could feel like, oh, I have this in common with them, and like, okay, we could like be bros in this sense, or like be cool in this sense. But like, do you take the time to reflect on if these are the people that you want defining you? Defining in terms of like, look at my friends and I'll tell you who you are. Y'all know that saying. So yeah, I don't think as freshmen people really do that. And then sophomore year we moved to West, and it's like, oh, my friends are like in this club and that club, and they're taking up leadership positions, and okay, things are shaking. Okay, I have to, try to figure it out. And then that time goes by, and it's junior year. And junior year, you're really, also sophomore, you pick your major, and you're stressed, and the sophomore slump, and all this stuff. And then junior year, it's like, oh shoot, like I'm almost out of here. It's halfway through. Like, is this really, am I solidified? Like, drama starts happening with friends, like relationships start falling apart, and it's just like, what? But by senior year, you know who you are. Yeah. At least, there are moments when you question. But you have 3 years under your belt. You feel like this place is mine. Like I got this, and like you know who is there for you. Like you know who you want to be intentionally in friendship with. And then you look into the future, and it's like I don't have time to waste or play games or do all of this nonsense. Like you're just more settled in yourself. I don't know what you asked me to borrow.
No, this is all great. Yeah.
Yeah, but like in recent times, like I've been really happy. I actually, like I mentioned, went on a study abroad last semester because it was just it was getting to be a bit too much to be here because I had lost a lot of family members over the past 3 years at home. And just for like a multitude of reasons, I wasn't able to go home for any of those funerals or to mourn with my family. So that was like really, really hard. And it was just, it felt like I was attaching all of those really sad and hard feelings to Duke because Duke was the thing, like, I'm here.
Keeping you.
Yeah, like I can't afford to go home right now and all that stuff. And so it was just time for me to like step away. And then also, like, I found a program that I was really genuinely interested in. It was in global health, and I can talk to you guys about it after. It's like really, really good. And I just took it as an opportunity to like go and like breathe and exist outside of this space because I don't know if you guys have realized it yet, but like it was crazy. I don't know what your first 5 weeks have been like, but it's definitely like a pressure cooker for sure. And so I just needed that time. And now being back, it has been interesting transitioning back to Duke and classroom learning and all that because the nature of the program I did was very experiential. We were in the field. We were going into communities. We were talking with people. We were like on the ground talking. And now coming out of a 3-hour lecture, it's like, oh my God. And then other things like just, But overall, I've been really good. Friendship has been going really good. 2 of my friends just got engaged on Saturday.
No way.
Crazy,
That's
I
awesome.
tell you. So fun. But yeah, senior year has been going really well. I have no real complaints about it. And yeah, I feel really good.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. So yeah, we've got this. Let's go for.
May I ask one?
Yeah, go. Oh yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
How do you preserve your culture in everyday life?
Definitely through music. I listen to a lot of Caribbean gospel music. So like artists from my country, from Grenada, from Jamaica, from Guyana. I listen to a lot of the Christian music that comes out of there. I'm always on a call with my mother. Literally, if you see me on campus, if I'm not walking with somebody, I'm on the phone walking and talking to my mother. And she's telling me about what she's cooking or what she's doing, or if she went in Tongue, or if she went Grandy, or like wherever and whatever she's up to. Like she's always sending me pictures and stuff, and like I keep in contact with my cousins at home. So it's a lot, it's like through technology, right? I'm no longer in the Students of the Caribbean Association, like I said, but I go to their events. I know that the organization is going through a lot of changes right now, and it's been kind of hard on them, but I support them because I think, like, for me, that space was so helpful freshman year. It's like a place that felt kind of like home, the closest thing that I could have gotten, and so just hoping that, the org, it could get back on its feet and that sort of thing. Yeah. Now actually there's a freshman, well there's a sophomore as well. There's a sophomore and a freshman. I think some students are going to interview the sophomore Ariana Agostini from Trinidad, and there's a freshman, Shanice Martin as well. So that's been really fun. I go to church with the freshmen on Sundays, and it's just nice to talk to each other in our accent, like talk and like use our terms, and like it's just nice to get back to that and feel a little bit of proximity to home. I think those are the main ways. And then I'm actually in a Spanish class, and we have a lot of readings on the Caribbean and like a lot on like colonization and so on. And it's just like, it's cool to be able to talk about it from somewhat of a first-hand perspective in terms of like what it looks like on the ground today. Those are the main ways. And I try to go home whenever I can. Yeah. So like I was home for 7 weeks. And it was amazing. So yeah, that's how I stay connected through technology, family, music. Yeah.
Between like travel and all that, is it enough time or worth going back like for fall break?
No, absolutely not. No.
How long?
So I was gonna say, I don't have like a terrible commute or so. I usually fly from here to New York. And like you would think you would do from here to Miami, but a lot of my family, when they were coming over in the 80s and 90s, had some poor experiences with immigration and like customs and so on in Miami, and like just those stories of being held in interrogation rooms for hours and like being questioned and all that stuff. So they'd rather me go through New York. So I go from here to New York, which is like 2 hours, I want to say. Or maybe it's 2.5, and it never takes 2.5, it's always 2. Like whatever it is that they say on the ticket, it's always like 20 minutes less, I guess. And then the flight from JFK to home is like 6.5 hours. So overall, it's not like some students have the 24-hour full day of travel. It's not like that. But when you factor in cost, it's just 4 days. No, I would be comfortable with like 3 weeks at least to shell out that kind of money, because tickets are like $6.50. It's a lot. Wow. It's a lot, yeah. If you get it in an off time, you might get like $5.25 or $5.50 or something.
Still, yeah.
But it's a hefty chunk.
Interesting. So you're gonna stay here for like Thanksgiving too?
Yeah, I'll be here. Yeah, I might go over to like a friend's house though. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you spoke about how you said like your family, who are obviously of the same population, like their experiences in the U.S. in their past. How would you, like hearing all of their stories and of course being in contact with them, how would you describe the Trinidadian and Tobago and population in the U.S.? Like how would you?
Oh, that's what.
Like how would you describe that group?
Well, they call Brooklyn the little Caribbean, because there's just a ton of Caribbean immigrants in Brooklyn, and for the most part they came over 80s, 90s, just for like better work opportunities and that sort of thing. From what I could see, my dad lives in New York, and from what I could see, they seem to be like really active in terms of keeping the culture alive. So you're walking down the street, there's a roti shop. Roti is like very common at home. There's a Jamaican restaurant. There's golden crust everywhere. Their patties are good. The curry chicken is not as good, but their patties are really good. Yeah, and like you see the flags everywhere, like in everybody's window, that sort of thing. The music is like, they have the CDs and so on the streets. People are blasting the music in the streets. People are like, yeah, it seems in New York to be very much alive, especially like when you have Carnival and so on. A lot of people for Labor Day celebrations will have their own Caribbean parties and so on. So in terms of food, music, like visibility, it's very much alive. I can't say, like I don't get off Duke's campus, so I can't speak for what it looks like in North Carolina. In Georgia and Atlanta, I know that it's very much alive as well, because my mom has some family there. And like they will often talk about like whatever little festivals are happening. They don't really, like my mom's family doesn't really like partake in it, but they're always aware of it happening, and it's a thing. How would I describe the Trinbagonians in the US? I don't know too much about them.
I know, it's like, it's really broad, yeah.
But yeah. And like, so if you think about it, so like Nicki Minaj, she's from Trinidad. I think, what'd you say?
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. So it's just interesting. We were actually talking about this in my Spanish class, how like when the US wants to claim you, they'll claim you, right? And how, for example, like, y'all didn't know that.
Yeah.
Y'all, Rihanna is from Barbados, or Bahamas. Where's she from? Barbados. Barbados. Wait, I may be wrong on that. I think it's Barbados because she's Asian. Yeah. Who, like, just these different people in media, in music, in pop culture and whatnot, who have quote unquote other heritage, but that's not highlighted, right? And so just like the representation is really important, but if the US don't want you, they don't want you. And they're gonna erase that part of your identity so that you would be more palatable for US audience, right? So overall, I can't really speak about like how, like what Trinbagonian culture is in the US, but in certain parts you see it.
Interesting. All right, yeah. So you, like you just said, you don't have it. So would you say, do you happen to know off the top of your head, or just like in your experience, like if there's any specific issues that exist within that group, like on like a larger scale? Like I asked if there are issues unique to you coming here. Are you aware of anything like that's specific to the? Did you say Trinbago? Is that how you put it together?
So Trinbagonian.
Trinbagonian.
Yeah, so if you're wanting to only talk about Trinidad, it'll be Trinidadian, and then only wanting to talk about Tobago, it'll be Tobagonian, and then together it's Trinbagonian.
Trinbagonian. All right.
It's a mouthful. No, it is a mouthful. If I know any issues specific, I need to call my mother. I'm kidding. If I know any issues specific to Trinbagonian people in the U.S. No, not that's like distinct from other Caribbean immigrant groups or African immigrant groups or just immigrants on the whole. I know, so like in my experience, right, growing up, my dad will always send barrels home. You all know what barrels and stuff are, right? So barrels, like just these big containers that you can pack whatever in. Okay. So people, you know how like somebody might send a huge box, like barrels are cylindrical, right? And you could just stuff whatever in there. Okay. So my dad growing up would often send barrels with food, oil, sugar, peas, whatever, right? Food stuff, clothes for me, notebooks, pens, supplies, whatnot, right? And that, I mean, it's hard, right? When you're living with one parent and the other parent is in a foreign country trying to make a better living for you and his wife, or for you and their spouse, whatever the individual case dynamic may be. And so I'm aware of a lot of children of parents who immigrated to the US or to Canada, UK, wherever, having those issues of like, oh, I didn't grow up with, and it's usually the father, oh, I didn't grow up with my father. And like, yeah, they provided financially, but that physical presence, that emotional support, that having a man or having my mother in the house with me, I didn't grow up with that. So just working through all of that stuff, I know is like an issue for Trinbagonian and Caribbean at large, like children of those immigrants. And like often you would hear the term like, oh, barrel baby, like you're a baby who like was sustained on these things coming in from abroad. Yeah. And then to some extent, like even within country, between children whose one parent was abroad providing for them, there might be jealousy to other children whose both parents are living with them in Trinidad, but they look at that child like, oh, so you're daddy from America, so you're like you know, that sort of thing. And so it's just interesting, like the dynamics are interesting. That's the only thing I could really speak on.
No, that's that's fine. Do you mind if we backtrack a little bit and like go back to like your childhood experiences in Trinidad? It just reminded me we haven't really like covered it too much. So like you said, the barrel baby culture, was that like a common phenomenon, would you say?
Not very, very common, no. I think I may have been the only child in my primary school whose father or one parent was living in the US. Yeah, I don't think anybody else. So it's not extremely common, but there are enough cases of it,
Yeah, interesting. And then so just on really just your own opinion level, what was your childhood life like in Trinidad?
It was
How
fun.
was it?
Yeah, I had a good childhood. My best friend, who's basically like my sister, Amira, she lives like 2 houses away from me, and she would always come over at my house, and we would have sleepovers all the time. And it was a really, really good time. And there's off like so since my dad my dad has been living in the U.S. since before I was born, right? And so I didn't grow up with him in that sense. Like he would visit, but I didn't like grow up with him in the house constantly. And so my family, my parents were very much like, you're not going to go to anybody else's house for a sleepover. Anybody wants a sleepover, they'll come here, and they could know that their children are safe, because like my mother as a woman is in the house. There's no man for like other parents to be worried about sending their girl child with or anything like that. So that's why my best friend was always constantly at my house. I had a good time in that sense. We went to the same nursery, which was like 12 streets away or something. Went to the same nursery, and so where I live in the eastern part of the country, and my mother worked in town, right, in like the capital of the country. And she would early in the mornings drop me off at the nursery, and then she would go to town, and I would be at the nursery all day. And then when I grew up and started going to, when I was like 5, I was 4 actually, and started going to preschool, I would have to start making that commute with her. From the time I was like 4 and a half, I would be waking up every morning at 4 a.m. to start getting ready to leave home, to be able to get to town in time before like any traffic, anything, so she could get to work on time, so I could go to school on time. But whenever vacation came around, Easter vacation, July, August, Christmas, whatever, she would leave me at the nursery. So even as an 8-year-old, 12-year-old, I was actually not 12, maybe up until 10, I went back to the nursery. And I enjoyed like feeling like I was responsible for the younger babies. Because at this point, like I could help auntie change the diapers, I could help make the bottles and so on. And my friend would also be back at the nursery as well. And a lot of the older children whose parents were in a similar situation. So we were like basically playing mummies and daddies, and it was really, really fun to like help the aunties take care of the children. I had like this, what do you call it? Like, not a swimming pool, but like the flat ones that sprouts out water.
Oh, like a fountain?
Like that you could like go dive on.
Oh, slip and slide? That's it. Yeah. Okay.
So I had. Oh, you meant like the friend? No,
I wasn't sure. You just said like sprouting up. I wasn't sure what you meant. All right, a slip and slide.
Like with the mat and then So we had one of those, and me and my friend always would just be playing on that. The childhood overall was fun, like in church and stuff, and going to Sunday school with my friends, and I had a good childhood. And everybody in my community like looked out for us. So like when I was around 11, 12, and like feeling like, okay, I could stay home by myself. I'm okay to stay home by myself. My neighbor, who's also my godmother, she lives opposite. She like was at my birth and everything like that. She would check in on me. She's a stay-at-home wife. She would check in on me. The neighbors down the street would. So it was very much like, it is very much a community, very tight-knit. It's almost too tight-knit because everybody knows your business and your houses are like this close together. And if I'm in this room, Auntie Marva next door can hear me talking on the phone. So I'll be like, okay, hold on, let me go to that other room. But I had overall a really, really good childhood. Yeah, it's fun.
Awesome. Yeah. You just say like a lot of the village raises the child type mentality.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the whole way up.
Definitely. Like, so I would take lessons like extra classes, so that you could like supplement the in school curriculum and just give yourself the best chance at like passing your exams and all that good stuff. And oftentimes my aunt down the street would come pick me up after lessons, because at this one it's like 9 at night, and then to travel back home would have been a lot. Or my mother would come, just depending on how she would work. My mother would come and like literally sit on a concrete slab outside of the lessons place, and then we would take transport and go back home, or just those sorts of things. So it's definitely like everybody has a stake in the child's development, and people are genuinely interested. Of course, you would have the cases where like that interest may not be as like, I want the best for you. It may be like, let me see what's going on with you, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I've been very blessed and fortunate to have people who genuinely care about me and love me, and like so many people have sacrificed for me to be here. Like people who are not my blood, but who are my family, like have sacrificed, and that's just been beautiful, and I'm so grateful. So, yeah.
That's great. And do you still keep in touch with a lot of them?
Oh yeah, my uncle's birthday. So my godmother's husband,
Mhm.
and he's like essentially my
Yeah,
father.
yeah.
Like he's literally my father. Oh yeah, he would take me to my exams. I love my Uncle Barry. His birthday was yesterday, and I called him, and he was like, "I miss you so much," and like. He was like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna see him when I go home for Christmas. But he's. What time y'all got this room until?
We did 3 to 4:30.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
so we're good.
Good. But yeah, I'm like really, really close to him. I'm still close to my whole family. My grandmother was not my blood, but she is honestly closer to me than my blood. Grandmother passed away 2 weeks ago, so that was really hard as well. But like. Yeah, just like keeping in touch with people is very important, especially when you don't have that chance to do it in person often. Like as often as you can call or just send a quick text or like I hope you're doing good and that kind of thing. And yeah, that's really important. And so I do that.
Interesting. Yeah. And then so you've described like your childhood was great and you enjoyed it, and so your transition to what was it? Was it you said Form 4 was your high school? Like what was the last form you took?
Oh, the last one was upper 6, so like Form 6.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's
way
a lot.
past that.
So it's
Okay.
essentially like 5 years of regular high school
Mhm.
and then 2 years of advanced high school.
Gotcha.
Pretty much. So Form 6, I was 18.
18 when you finished Form 6?
Yes, and then I took a gap year and then I came to college when I was 19.
Interesting. So what was so you said like the universities weren't great back home, or like there was that disconnect, and so were you always looking at an American college or
I
like
wasn't looking
somewhere
at nothing in
abroad?
America.
No.
I did not want to come to America. I was completely good staying at home with my mother and my friends, and I was just like, this is what, like, why do I have to go abroad? Now, I do have U.S. citizenship, right?
Mhm.
And so that was something that my parents were like, the thing is you have the opportunity. And
Gotcha.
you need to realize that if you want to do anything serious, quote unquote, with higher education, you need to take this opportunity that you have. But I was just so, a lot of it is fair. Like, yes, I have family in the US, but that's not my mother is it. Like, she's my main support system, and I wouldn't be with her. But she has no interest in moving to America. She's quite content living the rest of her life at home. She's literally like, it's here I was born, it's here I will die. Like, this is it, right? And so, it just felt like it would have been world, me, boom, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and so it was really, really scary. But I did eventually wise up. It took a long time to wise up, in their opinion. But I know, I just realized that they were correct. Like, and the main goal at that point was medicine. If that's what I really want. If I practiced in Trinidad, that would be the only place that my certification would be recognized. If I practiced in the US, my certification could be recognized in Trinidad and other. You know what I mean? And so also looking at the quality of education that I would receive in the US or UK, Canada, but mostly thinking US at that point. Also looking at just like the breadth that I could be exposed to, and then realizing, oh, liberal arts education, that sort of thing. But so with art in Trinidad and Tobago, once you do those Form 6, it's called CAPE, Caribbean Advanced Placement. Is it Placement Caribbean Advanced CAPE? What does CAPE stand for? I forget. But essentially, if you do the Caribbean version of the AP examinations in my country, you are eligible for national scholarships. You have to do good on that.
Yeah.
But so there are two types. There's open and there's additional. Open scholarship, the government of Trinidad and Tobago will pay for you to be educated wherever in the world you want to be educated fully. They will pay, but you have to give them back time and service, equivalent to the amount of money they put in you. So if your program that you choose in Ireland is 8 years to complete, cool. Depending on how much money they put into you, you would have like 10 years of service to give back.
Okay.
If your program is like a regular 4 years, you may have to give back 3 years, 5 years, depending on the cost and that sort of thing. Okay, and then the other type of scholarship is the additional scholarship, and the government will give you the sum of the money it will cost for you to be educated in Trinidad and Tobago or in the wider Caribbean, if you want to go outside of our region for education. So if you were to stay in Trinidad and you got an additional scholarship, essentially everything would be paid for. If you were to come to the US and do a degree, that you could have done in Trinidad or something like that, they would give you the amount of money it would have cost in Trinidad to do it, and you have to find the rest.
Gotcha.
It sounds great, but the thing is, the rollout is slow. So I know like of people who have, I thank God did get a scholarship, but I was fortunate enough to not have to accept it because Duke was like, we got you, we'll take care of you, right? And I know people who struggle to get the government to give, the promise is they're gonna give it to you. When? Where am I gonna get it? Like, is it gonna be 3 years out? So a lot of people's parents have to take out all of these loans and go into debt and all of this. So it's just an added stress. And it's sad after literally, you know this from the time you're entering, like from the time you're 12. So you have to work towards that from that age. It's not something that suddenly pops up in Form 6. Because to get into Form 6, to do those 2 like years of advanced exams, you have to do well in Form 5 when you're leaving high school. So it's like something that you work for so long, and then for it to end up like not panning out the way you wanted, it was really unfortunate, but it happened. How did we get here? I really talk in circles. But, and so, yeah, I just eventually realized that coming to the US would have been the best option for me, in that like wanting to pursue medicine and like having a liberal arts education, and that's why I ended up taking the gap year, because during the 2 years of advanced classes, I needed to focus on securing the scholarship so that coming to the US would be possible, right? And so I just gave my all to that, and it was really hard, but I did it. And then I took a gap year, and I was like, all right, I don't even know what schools are in America. Let's look it up. And yeah, that's what happened.
Did you have like a list, or did you pretty much just like?
No, truly, like the first day I was like, good colleges in the US or something like that, honestly. And I have family, like I said, who live here, so they were all along suggesting. And according to my father, he already knew where he wanted me to go. He wanted me to go to like schools in New York. I had been to like New York maybe 4 times, I think 5 maybe. I didn't want to go to school in New York. It was too busy, like too much. I could handle it for 2 weeks, and then I'm tired because we're in Brooklyn. You know, the apartments, brick. It's just too tight, and there's no greenery, and it's just like confined. And I knew that I didn't want that for my education. So while they were suggesting, I know some of my aunts were also saying I should look at Emory because they're in Atlanta, but I wanted this decision to come from me, and I wanted to like have. Because I honestly took it as this is like my first adult decision, right? Yeah. So I wanted to be in control of it, and I knew that I may be really naive and not knowledgeable. Because based on my understanding, y'all have preparation like college counselors and advisors and all this. I didn't have that. So it was really something that I wanted to come from me in terms of I'm confident in the schools that I'm applying to, and like it took a while. I mean, I was literally calling the Duke admissions office so much. The phone bill was so high. I was calling because I was so confused. Like, so what do I do? And like, they put me in contact with current students and former students, and everybody. Duke really stood out because everybody was just so willing to talk to me and share their Duke experience, how they came to Duke, what it's been like, what it is like if they were current students. And as I'm talking about this, I really need to like go back to those emails and like just kind of give them an update and thank them because I mean, when I was making my choices, like that was something that imprinted on my brain, just how tight the Duke alumni network is, and like how willing people are willing to just be like, yeah, let's talk, like this is what it is. Yeah. So.
That's super cool. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it was the same for me. Like everyone was so friendly about it, but that's awesome. And so did you have any other, or was Duke your choice?
Duke was definitely number one. Like, Duke was definitely number one. The other ones also I was salty because their financial aid wasn't as good. And I was like, oh, Duke really wants me. And Duke, like, is going to make it possible for me to come. So much to the point where I don't need to accept this scholarship, which is crazy because I worked for that so hard. I had it in my mind for so long. And then God just, like, he let Duke come through. I was like, thank you. Yes. Yeah.
So was that kind of like bittersweet getting that letter of acceptance, but then knowing that meant you had to go, or how was that?
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually going to be leaving home, and wow, this would be the longest that I would have gone for one. 2, my mother would not be with me. 3, it just everything would be so new. 4, I probably have to start figuring out how to code switch so I'm not like talking like a proper Trini the whole time. 5, like it's going to be winter and I don't like the cold. Like literally everything was just coming to my mind. Everything, and I was like, oh my god. Yeah, and I actually like remember vividly when I got the decision letter. I feel like y'all would remember even more because you just got it. But that day, I'm gonna say what happened during the day. It was a fun day, but very tense as well. And the decision was going to come out at 7 p.m. Sat down and panorama news starts at 7 at home on TV. So mommy was watching the news and it was 7 and I was like, and it was 7:02 and I was like, and then it was 7:04 and I was like, what? They didn't accept me. Oh no. And then like I think a couple seconds after 7:04 hit, I got the email and what I saw was like congratulations.
Yeah.
I started crying. We started hugging me and mommy and it was so sweet. And then like in that moment it was like, oh, okay. So this is like actually like I'm not gonna be home for another year. Like this is it. I'm going. So yeah. Kinda just hits you.
Been a whirlwind since, I bet.
Truly. My Duke experience has been amazing. One thing that I've really like prioritized during my time here is traveling. So I've gone to Costa Rica. Well, first I went to Spain, right? The summer after freshman year. And then I went to Costa Rica the next summer. And then I just did this program. And through it, I went to India and then South Africa and then Brazil. So with me having a different culture perspective to begin with, coming to the US was like, okay, I have to learn about US culture. But also it's very Duke specific at the same time because this is where I'm spending the majority of my time. And then after that first year was done and I felt like, okay, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what life here is like, at least life at Duke in the US is like. I just started desiring wanting to see other cultures because at home, like I have that education of like, oh, we have immigrants from all over home. We have ethnicities from all over at home, right? And I did learn about it and we celebrate everybody's holidays. I think we have like the most holidays in the world, honestly. We celebrate everything. Spiritual Baptist Day, Emancipation Day, Indian Arrival Day, Diwali. Like we celebrate it all. And I want to continue that. Like I want to just see what else this world has to offer, what other like world views I could learn from, perspectives, how I could better myself and the way I think about the world and people groups and stuff. And so like summer after freshman year I just kind of started and I honestly never really stopped. And so like with travel, Duke has been great. With people that I've met along the way, friends, mentors, like Duke has been amazing to me. I'm so grateful to be here. It does not erase the hard times and like the times when people were just disgusting and mean to me for no reason other than the obvious reason of like, oh, you're foreign in this space or you're black in this space. Oh, but you're not like American black, you're like Caribbean black. What is that? Like all that stuff. But you just constantly seek ways to better yourself and grow and mature and like stay firm in who you are. So it's been good. No real complaints.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so would you say at this being give or take like your 4th year here, would you say that do you now identify as American and Caribbean? Like where do you put yourself? Yeah. Not in terms of like census or anything, but just how do you see yourself in your head?
Both, but not equal, right? So definitely both. I do have a privilege as being a U.S. citizen, right? That I can't like dumb down or I can't like, oh, keep that on the hush hush. And there are aspects of American life and American culture that I have embraced. There are some that I just don't agree with and I'm like, no, I won't do that. But America's a part of my story, just as Trinidad and Tobago is a part of my story, and now just as those other countries I've called, because of the connections I've made, are a part of my story as well. Can I claim heritage to Brazil? No. Can I claim to India? No.
Yeah.
But like to these two, Trinidad and Tobago, of course, undoubtedly, and then America, yes, both but not equal.
Interesting. And then when you first got here, what would you have said? Like, had you been asked that question when you first got here, would you said just 100%?
Yes. Yeah.
Tobago?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I would have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a transition, and are you proud of the journey? Like,
Oh,
are you,
definitely. Like, I honestly would not change anything. I wouldn't. Even like, I briefly mentioned the losses that I dealt with during my time here. Even those, like, I now have so much peace about it because I know like it was their time to go. And a lot of these things sound cliche, but until you actually walk through that and go through that grieving process and question like why, literally why, to God, especially like someone who has faith and believes, it's hard. But then you understand, like, I don't know, it's really hard. But I got to the point where I had peace about it, and I got like the suffering is not just for suffering's sake. The suffering has a deeper purpose. Maybe I don't to this point know what the purpose is, but I have faith and trust that there is something that I couldn't see, that something like even more horrendous could have happened in that person's life a week later had they lived, or just yeah. And so would I change any part of the journey? Probably would have eaten less, but no. 'Cause listen, the freshman 15 is real, okay? Real as can be. But no, everything has been as it should have been. Everything has been what it needed to be to get me to this point right now. And I'm grateful for every aspect of it.
Wow. Yeah, I honestly think I'm good. Gabe, do you have any other questions? Just a few that, if you don't mind, can we run through just outside of like the normal flow? But yeah,
For sure.
that was. Thank you so much for telling us so much about yourself and your story.
You're welcome.
Meeting us an hour ago, like it's
yeah.
we know you so much better now.
I don't know you guys.
Yeah,
we
barely
should
at all.
get coffee
Yeah.
or something and talk, because I know y'all got to know me, but it's one-sided.
One thing that you should know about me, I guess, is that my parents, my dad's side, my grandparents are from the Dominican Republic,
Oh wow, okay.
and my grandma's mother was from like West Indian descent, and she was like one of like 14.
Wow.
And my great grandfather, his son was my grandfather, and he had 13 kids, and they grew up in Brooklyn. They traveled to Brooklyn, and they lived in New York for their whole lives.
Yeah.
And like some of the points you're talking about, how they like embrace cultural aspects. They live in like these like mini communities, you know. Like they literally, when I used to go there when I was little, it was like the same thing. It was like pretty cool.
Yeah.
I could relate to that.
And also, like, in terms of great-grandparents having a ton of kids, I relate to that so much because my great-grandparents on my father's side had 13 children. And so now I have, like, at this point, 4 cousins. Like, this little baby was born just the other day. I was like, what is going on in this family? I'm in a family group chat on WhatsApp with 33 cousins, and that's not everybody. And it's so many people, I tell you, but, yeah. What should I know about you?
I mean,
no pressure.
Where'd you visit in Michigan? It just made me wonder. I was born by Detroit.
Detroit, yeah.
Oh,
Detroit,
yeah?
yeah. That's where my aunt and uncle live.
That and then moved down to Florida, and I told you my parents worked in the USVIs for a good few years before I was born. Just out of curiosity, like your perception, do you see the USVIs as just like tourism central?
I mean, it is like very touristic, of course.
Like when I said that about the food, where you're just like, this kid has no idea what he's talking about.
No. I mean, you visited, and so you obviously have that experience of having been there for some time and enjoying like the delicious meals and so on. So it's not like you can't speak to it because you actually like were there for some time. So I didn't think anything bad at all when you. I'm sorry, I didn't think anything bad at all when you brought this up. You should visit Trinidad though, or revisit USVI, but yeah.
That's cool.
And have you been to the DR?
I was in Punta Cana, but it was more of like a tourist thing.
Gotcha.
But I have maybe like 22 cousins.
So
that
many.
Live, yeah, that live inside. Yeah.
So many.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I got 3.
Well, that makes weddings very easy.
Yes. I usually know who everyone is, which is handy.
it's so funny. Like at weddings, it's free for all. Everybody
Yeah.
come. You don't even like need an invitation. You're like, oh, that's my cousin, and you just go, and it's such a fun time. But it's very chaotic, especially like now in recent years, people are getting onto this whole wedding planning trend of like guest lists, and it has to be really set. So there have been some tensions in terms of people showing up, and then it's like, oh, there's a list, and whew. So
Oh, boy.
it's very interesting but fun.
Yeah. Huh, that's sweet. Yeah, did you got a few more that we skipped over, Gabe?
I think that was
Alright.
awesome.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what do you guys do with this information now? What's happening?
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this all and probably make like an abbreviated transcript real quick and then put it down. And so we have to write I think it was like 10 pages. We have to write a pretty decent paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
the freshman.
I know.
Aw.
Is that nothing? Is that? Oh, I thought you were. Oh, jeez. I thought you were gonna tell me to
you
get
mean
so
to tell me I'm
much
gonna have to
worse.
start writing 13 pages
Oh,
on a
jeez.
regular?
Oh,
no.
no. Alright. You had me scared
So
for
funny.
a second.
No, I'm just saying, like, I remember when I had my first 10-page paper due, like, freshman year, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Now it's a little better, but I had a 6-page Spanish paper due yesterday, and I wanted to cry because it was horrible, and that's the shortest one of the semester.
Really?
We're gonna work up to 12 pages, and I'm like, what?
Spanish?
Are you kidding me?
Jeez.
In
In Spanish?
And
That's
this
insane.
is a mix between a graduate level and undergrad level, so like I kind of get it because he's expecting that like
Of course,
upper level, but at the same time,
Still,
this is not
like,
our only
yeah.
class.
Come on. Yeah.
So
Would you say you're fluent? Like.
pretty much, yeah. Like I love Spanish. I studied it all throughout high school, but for 5 years. I didn't do that as one of the more focused classes for the last 2 years. And then I came to Duke and I was like, let me start at 102 because at that point it had been 2.5 years since I was in class speaking Spanish. And then I did 102, went to Spain, came back, did 300 and something, then went to Costa Rica. And then at that point I was like,
Yeah.
and then like continuing, I'm a minor, so I always like, I've finished the minor at this point, but I think next semester I'll still take a Spanish class just to keep it going.
That's cool. I really want to do that too, but it seems
Yeah.
tough with the whole Pratt schedule. They're trying to. Like,
No.
Don't do it to yourself. Do you like
I know.
engineering?
I
Okay,
love it,
good.
and I love Spanish too, though. Like, I
Okay.
really
You know
thoroughly
who
love
should-
it.
Well, Carter's not really. There's this guy named Carter who's my year, and he's very like STEM oriented, and also absolutely loves Spanish, and like finds a really good way to work it in. And now he's doing like research with refugees here and like Hispanic individuals here specifically, and I think he's like doing surveys and so on. Like I don't know why I just thought that you would be a cool person.
Yeah.
Would you be
Yeah,
interested?
absolutely.
In,
What is he studying? Do you know? Like what?
I think global health Spanish, and he's pre-med.
Oh wow.
This
Oh
boy,
my God.
he's a high achiever. Like
That's
everybody's
insane.
always so impressive, and he's so humble and chill. Like he's a good guy.
That's awesome.
So he would definitely be down to talk to you. We could like exchange information afterwards, and I will put you on to
That'd be
him.
sweet. Yeah.
What kind of engineering?
Right now I'm thinking biomedical, but it's subject to change.
Gotcha.
Like I don't really have anything
Gotcha.
set in stone.
How's the first month in Pratt been?
Honestly, like I definitely see what everyone's saying. I get like the complaints about it, but I really do enjoy what I'm doing. So
It's
like
good
the
for
work
you.
is kind of off put by like I want to know this information. So I'm
Nice.
having a good time. But
Okay, that's what matters. If you genuinely want to be there,
Mhm.
that's what matters. And how about for you?
I'm on like a pre-med track, so
Okay.
I want to go either neuroscience or biology.
Mhm.
And so far, Trinity is very enjoyable.
Mhm.
And yeah, I see a couple of the prac kids up to like 3 o'clock, and
He's like, yeah.
There's some late nights. That's definitely like, yeah.
but I've had it too, so
Yeah.
yeah. But so far, so good. Yeah.
Nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Y'all aren't you? No, that's really good to hear. I'm glad.
Yeah, and then do we ever ask you what you're studying?
Oh,
we literally
It's
completely
okay.
missed it.
It's
Sorry.
okay. I'm majoring in linguistics, and
Mhm.
I have minors in Spanish and global health.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That's a good plate yourself.
It's
you got going on.
definitely
Yeah.
it's definitely liberal arts for
Yeah.
sure. Definitely. And I've enjoyed it. Yeah. Faculty in linguistics are awesome, and then I've enjoyed the Spanish Spanish department as well. They're somewhat unorganized. Lord
Yeah.
knows they are. And then global health school. I really like it. That was the study abroad program. Was just like global health. So amazing.
That's sweet.
You should check it out. It's like, you know, if you're interested in like biology and pre-med and stuff, it's through SIT and it's health, culture, and community. And this is not something you need to think about right now at all.
Okay.
I don't know if are you guys interested in studying abroad
Yes.
during your
Oh,
time here?
absolutely.
Nice.
For sure.
Yeah. So I am a study abroad ambassador. And like I'm always just sharing my experiences with students abroad and like just what it's been like and how you could start searching for programs and the website, the GEO website is very comprehensive and there are student stories on there and check it out if you know, when the time comes and you're
Absolutely.
thinking about
Yeah,
summer
yeah.
semester.
You said you went abroad your first year?
Yeah, I did.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I've heard very few people.
Well,
Like,
this was summer after
do that.
freshman year, because you can't go abroad until that very first summer block, and I
Oh, okay.
ran. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
let's go. Time to start.
Huh, that's cool. And where'd you go the first time?
Spain.
Spain, yeah.
And it was for 6 weeks in Alicante, and oh my god, so good. I literally am still in contact with all of my host families. I
That
messaged
sounds
everybody
so
last
cool.
week and just gave them a little update, and they sent back pictures, and like all of them were like, please come back and visit, and I'm like, con qué dinero? Like with what money? I was like, like come on now. But yeah, Duke has been good to me.
That's sweet.
Yeah, but this has been so lovely. Did you guys have? Oh, you were gonna say.
Yeah,
something.
no, I could go on for about the Spain. I really want to go to Spain too. Like that's what I want to do. I want to go and just be immersed. Did you take just Spanish classes?
Yep.
Or-
So it was taught by Spanish
So
faculty. So this was what is it called? 148. So I did both. I'm forgetting the numbers. Something like 104 and 202 or something. It'll be on the website. But I did 2 classes in that 6-week span with Duke faculty, and of course they gave us all these cultural experiences. Like we learned how to dance bachata, we learned how to dance salsa, we went to this cave and we're dancing with like locals, and then we like went to all the museums.
Yeah.
We went to the museums and stuff, which was so fun. We had a cooking class. What else did we do? We did the most. They took us to Valencia, they took us to Granada, they took us to Toledo, they took doesn't it sound like
Yeah,
the doors are about to
yeah.
open? Okay, maybe I'm just hearing things. We had only one free weekend because every other weekend they had planned stuff for us, and on that free weekend a lot of people chose to go to Barcelona. And we went to the Sagrada Familia. Like, oh my god, it was so amazing. I was just looking at these pictures recently and I had the best time.
That's something I have to do.
You
Like,
must.
yeah.
There's a lot of programs. It's just with Pratt it is significantly like more difficult. But I feel like if you were to meet with someone at the GEO office, or I don't know if you guys are in contact with DAEs. I know the directors of academic engagement at Duke.
Okay.
Like I think it's very like important to start as soon as you can, like letting people know who you are and letting them know that you're here, and having those people looking out for you and saying, oh, so you're interested in BME in Spanish. Here's a program. Like we discussed it out. It's super cool. You're interested in biology, neuroscience, like, and you want to go to this particular country. Here's a list of pre-approved programs that we have. Like, start
That
thinking
is so
about
cool.
it. Like Duke is here for you. That's the thing, but you have to know how to get yourself to those resources, which yeah, it's a lot to learn, especially freshman year when everything is like flying at you and everybody's constantly handing you a flyer and you're just like, why?
Too much to like process all of it for sure.
Yeah.
But so I think that's all
Yeah.
we've got for today. It's been so much fun talking to you.
No,
Like
this
it's been
was
so
super
interesting
fun.
to hear your story.
Yes. Would you guys mind